right, let me welcome you to our orientation for the winter quarter of 2013. I'm happy to have you with us today, and I want to introduce first of all the brochure that's in your packet. As I mentioned before, this brochure covers 3 concentrations, one of which is Christian ministry, the second one is Christian counseling, and the third one is Christian education. The 2 classes that we're going to offer this quarter at the Prophetic School for Life and Ministry is number 1, how to teach the Bible. That class will probably be offered as the first class of the day. The second class is crisis counseling. That class is going to be offered as the second class of the day, which means that each class is 2 hours long, and usually we meet on Saturdays for 2 hours per class. I'm going to take a survey to see what time works better for most of the students. And by the way, for those of you that are interested in being distance learning students, we can discuss that as well. I am happy to say that a few years ago, I expanded the curriculum from what was International Seminary to what is now the Prophetic School for Life and Ministry. I found that it was important for us to provide students with curriculum that is compatible with many of the major theological schools and Bible colleges in the country, which means that when you look at the concentrations, you will see that these classes are offered at Oral Roberts University, Fuller Seminary, Azusa Pacific University, and even the university that I graduated from in my undergraduate program, and that is North Central University. It was a Bible college when I attended. It's now expanded to be a university. Now, I'm very excited about this quarter because we have 2 great classes that we're going to be offering. The first one I want to talk about is how to teach the Bible. And if you look at your packet, there is a course description that I've provided for you. There's a notepad if you'd like to use it, and if you're interested or need more information, all of this is yours to keep. There is an application there and a couple articles that I'm going to talk about in just a moment. Let's take a look at the first course description, and that is teaching the Bible. How to teach the Bible. Teaching the Bible is the course we are offering. This course is designed to develop the student's ability to teach the Bible effectively. Emphasis is placed on understanding the purpose of Bible teaching and the essential factors necessary to achieve that purpose. These factors include practical guidance in the areas of writing objectives, session planning, and other teaching skills. When you complete this course, as a student, you should accomplish these goals or objectives. Number 1, students should have gained greater confidence in determining his or her calling. Number 2, students should have developed a personal teaching philosophy by learning adult learning theory. That simply means learning about how adults learn. That's what adult learning theory means. Learning how adults learn. Thirdly, students will gain further understanding concerning the Holy Spirit's role in the teaching process. Fourth, students will have learned about various teaching methods along with their effectiveness. Fifth, students would have become aware of the importance of the spiritual, intellectual, and homiletical preparation that biblical teaching requires. Sixth, students should have become thoroughly familiar with the homiletical process through lecture, discussion, and preparation of lessons. The homiletical process basically is learning how to present the information you're teaching, just like a preacher presents a sermon. And so the homiletical process is learning how to apply preaching skills and developing sermons into the way you actually develop a lesson plan. Seventh, students should learn after completing this course how to prepare and deliver a lesson using the principles learned. And finally, eighth, students would have learned to interpret biblical texts for themselves. That means that you will learn a lot about the Bible and about how to properly interpret the Bible because you take this class or because you complete this class. Notice course requirements. I try to keep the requirements to a minimal because of the students that we are training. Most of you are employed, you have family, and you have a particular career already. So I am trying to limit our requirements. Students will be required to attend weekly lectures and participate in video conferencing if necessary, which will include internet research and electronic interaction. Special reading assignments and class work will be required weekly. A final exam will be required. All right, if you look on the back, we have the textbooks that are required. The first one, if you follow me, Rachel, the first one is The Art of Teaching the Bible. This book is written by a woman. Christine Blair is the name. This particular book costs $17. We can order it for you and have it here for the first class. The second book was published, I believe, in 2008. That's correct. The first book was published in 2001. This book is called The Complete Guide to Crisis and Trauma Counseling. That's for the crisis counseling class. We have a second book for the Teaching the Bible class, and this one is a good book, very detailed. This book is The Teaching Ministry of the Church, second edition by William Yount. That book was also published in 2008. I'm going to circulate the books in a few minutes so you could take a look at both books. Now, this is the class, How to Teach the Bible. I would like to share with you a personal testimony of why teaching is such an important industry. I was a student like you in my first year at Oral Roberts University. I happened to be in a Greek class at the time studying the Greek language. And before the class, I guess it was similar to an orientation, they were asking students, why do you want to become teachers? Because it was always my passion to teach the Word of God. And the professor asked, why do you want to become teachers? This was my answer. My answer was, I want to become a teacher of God's Word because I believe that I could best duplicate, replicate, or imitate the ministry of Jesus through teaching. I believe that a lot of people forget that Jesus was a master teacher. And the best way to bring people to spiritual maturity is teaching. So I embrace teaching as a ministry philosophy and a ministry conviction from the very beginning. And I said at Oral Roberts University, I said I want to be a teacher because I believe I could best represent, replicate, duplicate, or imitate the ministry of Jesus through teaching. Teaching is a very important enterprise, and I believe that most of you would agree that when you look at mega churches in America, they have a strong teaching component and they have a strong lay leadership component because most of the ministry is going to be done by lay people. But at the same time, we have to prepare people who are called for ministry. That's what we do here at the Prophetic School for Life and Ministry. Over the years, including our involvement with International Seminary, We have graduated over 300 students through this school. Many of them are pastors around the country. Many of them are involved in full-time ministry. I would like you to take a look at an article that I provided for you. It's called, "Why Was Jesus Called Teacher?" I thought this would be a good article just to wet your whistle or to introduce you to as we talk about teaching the Bible. I want you to look specifically at the statistics that's mentioned in the first paragraph. It says, and this is Ray Pritchard, it says, "It may interest you to know that Jesus was a teacher. Other words come more quickly to mind: Lord, Savior, Master, and Redeemer. But here is an amazing fact. Of the 90 times Jesus was addressed directly in the Gospels, 60 times he was called teacher. 60 times. This was the word the multitudes used. This was how the disciples referred to him. Jesus himself used the term when he said, 'You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am.' John 13:13. When Nicodemus came to Jesus by night, he said, 'We know that you are a teacher who has come from God.' John 3:2. History has echoed the truth of that verdict. Scottish theologian James Stewart said, and I quote, "The teaching of Jesus has had a power and an effect with which the influence of no other teacher can even for a moment be compared." End of quote. So we understand that Jesus was a teacher. And I believe that the best way to be able to reproduce Jesus in the lives of other people is through teaching. Teaching the Bible is a must, and teaching the Bible is a medium by which you can successfully help people grow spiritually. All right, so I want you to hold on to that article, and there will be many other articles. You could notice the website that this article comes from, www.jesus.org, and you might want to look at some of the other articles associated with this website. All right, now, any questions about the class, how to teach the Bible, the art of teaching the Bible, etc.? When we start the class, I'm going to develop a syllabus where we will be able to look at a week-by-week plan of study. But for now, I want you to just hold on to this course description. Any questions? Please highlight the fact that the first book, The Art of Teaching, is $17. The second book, The Teaching Ministry of the Church, is $26. Both books are required for this class. All right? In the next class I'm going to introduce in a moment, only one book will be required. Any questions about the class teaching the Bible? All right, we're going to discuss in a few moments what will work best in terms of time for students interested in enrolling in the winter quarter. Let's take a look now at the second class, and that is, I think, the left side of your packet, Crisis Counseling. You should find a course description there. Now, I had a friend of mine that said to me, "Dr. Lloyd, you should go back and get a second doctorate. You should get one in psychology or in clinical psychology, because I do a lot of counseling." I have a policy here at SOL, 15 minutes with the bishop. Everybody that becomes a new member, everybody that visits, I extend an invitation for them to make an appointment. It's called 15 minutes with the bishop. Most of the time, I'm counseling. And most of the time, I'm advising them in terms of their spiritual life. And this has become a part of my life's calling, I believe, to help empower people through counseling. One of the weaker links, I believe, in the church today is the counseling ministry. And we don't have enough Christian counselors. If there is an avenue that I would encourage people to look at in terms of a career path, it would be Christian counseling. And then secondly, I would recommend that people focus on Christian ethics, because we are living in a world where everything goes. People have very little moral convictions. The moral compass of most of our kids is very, very limited. And when you talk to people on the street, many of them don't really understand why I should not do this or that. Why is stealing an evil? Or why is it that it's wrong for me to do this or that? So Christian ethics, I believe, is another avenue of study that we need to focus on, and it's in the Christian ministry concentration of the Prophetic School for Life and Ministry. At some point, we will be offering Christian ethics as a course of study. Let's look now at the course description, Christian counseling, or rather crisis counseling. Crisis counseling is a very important course for pastors and ministers. This course is designed to help students understand the nature of crisis events, how individuals are impacted, and how to provide effective aid during and following times of crisis. Special emphasis will be given to training and empowering ministers and lay counselors who want to offer the right kind of care to hurting people. I think the right kind of care is important, don't you? All right, I believe that. So notice, after completing this course, students will learn how to address, number one, post-traumatic stress disorder. As a police officer, Greg, I'm sure that in your academy training, you've been trained in addressing issues of trauma with people, all right? And spiritually, people are going through traumatic experiences all the time, all right? My wife got a phone call this morning, and interestingly enough, after we woke up, she told me about this weird dream she had. Come to find out, the dream was probably a warning or a prophetic word about the death of a loved one. She woke up to find out that her aunt passed away today, her mother's sister. And it was interesting because in the dream she said, we were going through a tunnel and there were these animals. It was like we were crossing a river and they were full of animals. And I said to her, tunnels in dreams usually represents a passage, usually death. And in the Egyptian culture and Egyptian spirituality, in Egyptian religion, animals will accompany you to the afterworld, the afterlife. There's actually an Egyptian god that looks like a dog that is representing that particular entity. At death, this is the God that leads the person into the afterlife. So when she told me the dream, and after she got the call, I said that dream was preparing you for this call, because the tunnel and the animals assist and actually lead into the afterlife. And so we got the news. And so people are going through a lot of trauma, whether it's grief counseling or whatever. Notice, after completing this class, you will know more about post-traumatic stress disorder. Suppose you're in the Acadiana Mall. Someone decides to go postal and open an automatic weapon and start shooting people. People are affected by that. What about children? All right? That's where crisis counseling is necessary. It's called post-traumatic stress disorder. We will be able to address that upon completing this class. Secondly, children and teens in crisis. I think you would agree that kids today, because of bullying and other influences on school campuses, are going through their own crisis. And most of the time, you would agree with me, that they don't know how to explain or express what's going on with them. We will learn through this class more about children and teens in crisis. Thirdly, grief counseling and loss of a family member through death, including suicide. Here is an area that you don't get enough teaching on. How do we counsel people who are having to bereave the loss of a loved one who committed suicide? I'm an avid football lover, okay? And recently, Junior Seau, one of the, I guess, perennial favorites as it comes to being a middle linebacker, he took his life last year, only to find out that it was due to blows to the head and traumatic disorders following this kind of activity, this kind of sport. And how do you counsel a family that it's hard enough to lose a loved one, but to lose a loved one to suicide? There's this debate about whether a person could go to heaven. We're going to clarify that question in this class. All right? And so grief and loss at a family member's death, including suicide. Fourth, you will learn as a student crisis counseling and the minister. In other words, how does this affect you as a minister? Crisis and disasters in the church and community and more. So we're going to focus on crisis even within the church. Two great textbooks. One is only required, and this is the one, The Complete Guide to Crisis and Trauma Counseling, What to Do and Say When It Matters Most. This book is by H. Norman Wright, and it's about $27. So I would recommend that you order a copy through us or order the book yourself, and this will become a required text for this quarter. Now, the other book that I am recommending for this class is for ministers, and it is vitally important. It is vitally important that you add to your library books that can enhance your knowledge in a given subject. What we're looking at now is crisis counseling. This book, Crisis and Trauma in Counseling, is our required text. The recommended text for this class is Crisis Counseling, A Guide for Pastors and Professionals, published in 2008 by Scott Floyd. This book is used in major theological schools and Christian colleges. It is $14, and I recommend that you get this one as a book you would add to your library. But this book is the one that we're going to make required for the class, very extensive and deals with all of the objectives that we have listed in the course description. All right, so I want you to take a look at the books. I'm going to circulate them for a moment, and then I'm going to take questions. This is Crisis and Trauma, Crisis Counseling. This one is the first class, and that is How to Teach the Bible, the Art of Teaching, the Teaching Ministry of the Church. And so you can take a look at it. How are you? Good to have you with us. All right. These are the other books. So take a moment and take a look at the textbooks And I'm going to give you an opportunity to take a look at them, and I'll take questions.
You don't know exactly what the times will be for each?
No, I want to discuss the times. We are going to still meet on Saturdays. I am flexible with the time, and if we need to do a makeup class, I'm also flexible as it relates to other days. Now remember, if you're not able to make the class, we do offer these classes as distance learning courses as well. All of the classes will be videotaped and audio taped, and you could study at home at your own pace if you desire. Again, I would recommend that you look at this brochure inside the packet, which will tell you about the concentrations that you can look at. In many of the classes that's in the concentrations in this brochure, we have taught already. Some of them are available as distance learning classes as well. All right. I am open to discussing what you would be interested in terms of times to study. We are now looking at 2 weeks away. Classes will begin the last Saturday of this month. That will be January the 26th. On that day, we have a leadership luncheon that starts at 12 noon. It's called a Lunch and Learn for all of the ministers, deacons, lay leaders. I'm encouraging them to be here for that. So my suggestion for the 26th of January, if you are open, is for us to meet at 9:30 for the first class, and we're going to abbreviate the class. So we're going to be done by 11:30 with both classes. The date again is January the 26th. That day only, we're going to have to start early. We're going to have to start early because of our leadership luncheon, and that means we would start at 9:30 for the first class, end at 10:30, start the second class at about 10:45, and end the second class by 11:45 to prepare for the luncheon. And by the way, you're welcome to stay for the Lunch and Learn, because it is a training component that I've added to our ministry for all leaders, all ministers, and for people who are interested in training. All right, so right now, that day only is when we would have to start early because of the noon commitment that I have on the 26th. But I am open for other times on Saturday. The first Saturday in February, for instance, I am flexible depending on what works better. Maybe with a show of hands, you could tell me morning or afternoon. If mornings are better for you, raise your hand on a Saturday. Morning's good for you? All right. Afternoon is, anybody prefer afternoons on Saturday? We've done both. All right, so can you get your schedule to be here, Tiffany, on Saturday mornings? You could work it out? Mm-hmm. All right, good. All right, so for now, let's plan to keep the classes in the morning at 10 o'clock on the first Saturday of February, and I think that is what, February 1st? February 2nd, all right. And so we're going to make that, we're going to publish that time, and we will get in touch with the rest of the students about that.
And that's teaching the Bible classes first?
The first class, the first hour, is going to be teaching the Bible. The second class, each class will be normally 2 hours, but that first day it'll be more like an hour, all right, which is January 26th. So what we'll do is have teaching the Bible first, and crisis counseling will follow as the second class that we're going to offer. Questions? Yes, Kim?
Bishop, so sorry for coming in late.
No problem.
And I guess some of the questions that I'm going to ask, you've already gone over, but just briefly.
Sure.
You're saying You're gonna teach each class each Saturday?
Yeah,
How is it gonna
on
go?
Saturdays, we're gonna have 2 classes. Each class will be 2 hours long.
Okay,
And the first class is going to be teaching the Bible. In your packet, there's a course description for teaching the Bible and crisis counseling.
right.
All right, so yes, and what we're looking at now is having those classes in the morning.
Right, so
On
that'll
Sa-
be 4 hours.
It'll be 4 hours.
Okay.
Yes, so that means we'll start at 10, and we will be done by 1, I guess, the second class, or 2 for the second class. The first class will be from 10 to noon.
Okay.
The second class will start 15 minutes thereafter, so we'll be out by maybe 1:45, 2 o'clock for the second class. Now, there's one thing I want to bring to your attention. There's an article, you'll notice on the top of the page, there's an advertisement about Liberty University. But what I want you to see is the article. It's entitled, "What is Crisis Counseling?" And you will notice that in our classes, we're going to be very interactive. We're going to use video conferencing when necessary, and we're also going to have internet research as a part of your requirements. You'll see that on the course description. By the way, if you look at the course description for the second class crisis counseling, I think I have gone over all of what we're going to experience. You could just sit them on the first chair there. But I want to bring your attention to this article like I did for the other class. Here is an article from the website about.com, and it's about psychology. What is crisis counseling? I think you'll find this interesting. In mental health terms, and let me state that in this class, we're going to be referring to how to counsel from a clinical psychological point of view, mental health point of view, and also a biblical and theological point of view. We're going to stream those 2 disciplines together. We're going to look at the mental health community, and we're going to look at the theological community and see how both can aid in helping us be better crisis counselors. But some people might find this interesting. In mental health terms, a crisis, notice the article, refers not to a traumatic event or experience, but to how an individual responds to the situation. A crisis is not a crisis until there's a response to that crisis. In other words, if that crisis affects you and you internalize the trauma that was experienced in that crisis, then it becomes a crisis. A crisis is not something on the outside. A crisis is something on the inside. What we call a crisis is really a traumatic event. A train wreck, a school shooting, all right? Somebody going postal. That's a traumatic event. It doesn't become a crisis until it affects someone internally. So most people are not aware of the fact that a crisis is not something outside of you. A crisis is something that you allow to get inside. Mm-hmm. Now the question is, do you allow it to get inside? Then you have a crisis. All right? So notice what it says. The event that triggered this crisis can run the gamut of life experience, from developmental hurdles, such as going through puberty, to natural disasters, to the death of a loved one. Crisis counseling can help individuals deal with the crisis by offering assistance and support. Here is a historical fact. The roots of modern day crisis counseling date back to World War I and World War II. Prior to this time, soldiers who exhibited significant psychological reactions to the experiences weak or even disloyal. However, it soon became apparent that soldiers who were immediately offered treatment, I guess part of the article is missing, we see a counterpart to that. In other words, what this is telling us is that this is the historical timeline, students, of when crisis counseling actually developed as a discipline. It started after World War I and II. You could download this entire article and read it for yourself. And one of the things that we're going to discover is that there are actually 4 basic models for dealing with crisis counseling. And notice it talks about assessing the situation, education, offering support, developing coping skills. Those are the 4 major areas that we have to concentrate on as we look at becoming crisis counselors. Now, with that said, let me share a couple of interesting points with you, and we will be done for today. When we talk about counseling in the ministry, we have to share this caveat. You cannot call yourself a counselor in the ministry unless and until you are a certified counselor. And in most cases, you have to have had some clinical training. So we usually tell people not to use the term counselor. All right? We give spiritual guidance, and we do what's called pastoral counseling. Pastoral counseling is a unique and special discipline which includes crisis counseling. But I want to share this with you. Every state has its requirements for pastors. Every state has its requirements for counselors. So we will study in this class what the state of Louisiana requires for ministers who counsel in their churches. All right, so we don't use the term counselor if we're not a certified counselor, but we can counsel as pastoral counselors as long as we understand the requirements of the state and understand the parameters in which we can actually counsel. So there's a lot to it, and I think that you'll find it important and necessary to learn as much as you can if you're going to do a lot of counseling. All right, Janet had a question about the time we will meet. Kim also had a question about the curriculum. Any other questions about our start date? Let me say something about transferring credits. Anyone who studied with me in the Prophetic School for Life and Ministry can transfer credits. I am an adjunct professor at Fuller Seminary in Pasadena, the leading theological school in America. I'm also an adjunct professor for International Seminary in Plymouth, Florida. Those schools have relationships with other universities and colleges. Our school is not accredited by those institutions, but because I am a professor at the school, and because we do award a certificate or a diploma from a certified corporation, Spirit of Liberty Global Ministries, they will accept your credits or your certificate or your diploma as credit if you have to enroll in a future program. So if that is something you want to do in the future, we simply need to talk about it, and we can help get those credits to transfer to wherever you're going to school, as long as we have a relationship with those schools. And there's a list of schools that I could give you that International Seminary has a relationship with, and they do accept their credits. So that's just a word about accreditation. Most Bible colleges and seminaries are not what we call ATS accredited. the American Association of Theological Schools would require that we have a major library facility. All right, we would be required to have several people on faculty, faculty members with master's and doctorate degrees. That would be a requirement. A certain amount of students would have had to graduate in order for us to satisfy that accreditation requirement. So there's a lot that goes in, and most schools that are, quote, truly accredited takes years to arrive at that accreditation. But I guarantee you, everything you learn in the prophetic school will be compatible with any of the universities that I mentioned. And I've committed my life and now 40 years of ministry experience in helping people prepare for ministry. I take it seriously. I've committed my life to it. All right, any questions about this upcoming winter quarter? We plan to start in 2 weeks, January the 26th. And I would recommend that if you're interested in enrolling, you should fill out this application. It's only one form, this application front and back. And I would recommend that you you enroll with a deposit. The cost of each class is minimal. Each class is $200. The registration fee is $75. That $75 you pay one time, no matter how many classes you take each quarter. All right, so every quarter it's $75. The cost of the course is $200. So if you take one class, it's $275. If you take 2 classes, it's $475. You only pay the $75 registration fee once. All right, and so you can fill out the application. If you want to take it home with you, you can. Our phone number and email address is there for you, our website. In fact, let me give you my email address if you want to write it down. It is on the course description, LarryJLloydPhD@gmail.com. If you would like to email me, you can do so, and the email address is on the course description. Please pass the word on to anyone who would be interested. We have 2 weeks before we get started, and if you're interested, we could order books for you now. If you want to pay for your books and your registration fee, I'll ask Rachel to help us to collect the funds, and we'll have those ready for you within a week. You could have your books, or in a few days, you could have your books, and we could get started on January 26th. Yes, sir, and tell me your name.
Kurt.
Kurt.
My question is this: how much are the books?
Yes, the books are listed on the course description at the bottom. For the Christian counseling class, it is one book is required is $27. One book is required, and that's Christian counseling. It's $27. The recommended book is $14, but it's not required. All right, and then for the Teaching the Bible class, on the back of that page, there's 2 books required. One book is $17, and the second book is $26. That's for Teaching the Bible. All right, so pass it on to others who might be interested.
Bishop.
We have actually 2 weeks after. Yes, Kim?
How long is the session?
10 weeks.
10 weeks. Is it
We're
10
on
weeks?
a quarter system.
Okay.
So 10 weeks.
10 weeks.
And by the way, a student can enroll up to week 3. So that means if they miss the first 2 classes, we will still enroll them. But they cannot miss more than the first 2. If you miss 2 within the 10 weeks, you're allowed to miss 2 within the 10 weeks, but only 2. You would have to make up a class if you miss more than 2 classes. All right, so if you're interested, you could fill out an application. You can get back to us at your convenience. If you want to order books, we will take book orders now. If you want to pay a registration fee of $75, you can do so as well, or you could do it the first day of class.
So all we have to
Jen.
pay is the 200 per class since we've already paid the 75
Well, no, each quarter.
each quarter.
Is 75. So if you're like, in this case, Janet was in our homiletics class, and I want to commend her because she was the first student to present her preaching practicum. She preached her first sermon today. Today. And so congratulations on that, Janet. And we have others who are going to be presenting their sermons. But that registration fee is required every quarter. All right, but it's not required for every class. It's just once a quarter. All right? Any other questions? Well, thank you for your time, and thank you, Rachel, for being our media person today. And we will pass this on to others and have the video available on Sunday for others who were not able to make it.